My mother chose my stepfather, who has a secret family over me, so I regretted choosing her over my father. So, this is my story, and it's been a mess from the start. I'm 17 now, but this all kicked off a couple of years ago, when my family basically imploded. My parents had been together for as long as I could remember. High school sweethearts, the whole deal. My dad was a solid guy, worked hard, always made time for me. My mom, though, she started acting weird around the time I turned 14. She'd be on her phone all the time, smiling at it in a way she never did with us. I didn't think much of it back then. Teenagers don't exactly analyze their parents' every move, but looking back, the signs were there. Then it happened. One night, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Not the usual bickering about bills or whatever, but full-on yelling. My dad found out she'd been cheating on him with some guy she met through work. I stayed in my room, pretending I couldn't hear, but the next morning, it was all out in the open. She didn't even deny it. She just packed a bag and left, saying she needed space, and that she'd figure things out. A week later, she told me she was moving in with this other guy, my soon-to-be stepfather, and I had to choose who I wanted to live with. My dad sat me down, said he'd respect whatever I decided, no pressure. He looked broken though, and I hated seeing him like that. I picked my mom. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because she was the one I'd always been closer to growing up. She'd take me to school, cook my favorite meals, all that stuff. My dad was great, but he was quieter, less involved in the day-to-day. I figured I'd stick with what felt familiar. Plus, she kept saying how this new life with her and this guy would be better, how we'd be a family again, just different. I bought it. Packed my stuff, said goodbye to my dad, and moved into this new house with her and the stepfather. Biggest mistake of my life. The first few weeks were okay, I guess. New place, new room, trying to adjust. But it didn't take long for things to go downhill. My mom was all wrapped up in this guy, and I started feeling like I didn't even exist. That's where it all really started, the slow realization that I'd chosen wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me break it down. Living with my mom and her new guy, let's call him Greg, because that's his name, was nothing like I expected. The house was decent, a 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood, but it never felt like home. Greg was this tall, broad-shouldered dude with a permanent scowl, like he was always annoyed about something. I figured he'd at least try to get to know me, since I was part of the package deal with my mom, but nope. From day one, he acted like I was some random kid crashing on his couch instead of his girlfriend's son. He didn't talk to me much. If I walked into a room, he'd barely look up from his phone or the TV. Once, I asked him where the trash bags were, and he just grunted and pointed toward the kitchen without even turning his head. That was about the extent of our bonding. He worked some construction job, gone most of the day, but when he was home, he'd sprawl out in the living room like he owned the place, which, I guess, he did, and ignore me completely. My mom would be all over him, cooking him dinner, laughing at his dumb jokes, while I sat there eating alone at the counter. It wasn't just that he didn't care about me, he made it clear I was a burden. One time, I overheard him complaining to my mom about how much food I ate, like I was some freeloader. I'm a growing guy. I eat a lot, sure, but he acted like I was draining his bank account. My mom didn't defend me. She just nodded and told me later to try not to upset him. That's dumb. She used to care about what I needed, but now it was all about keeping Greg happy. School was my escape. I'd leave early, come back late, anything to avoid being around him. But even that wasn't enough, because the more I watched, the more I realized something was off. Greg wasn't just a jerk, he was hiding something. I didn't have proof yet, but I'd catch him stepping outside to take hushed phone calls, or he'd leave at weird hours and come back with excuses that didn't add up. My mom didn't notice, or maybe she didn't want to. She was too busy playing house with him. I started paying attention though, because if I was stuck in this crap situation, I at least wanted to know what I was dealing with. The longer I lived with Greg and my mom, the more I couldn't shake this feeling that something was seriously wrong with him. It wasn't just his attitude toward me, though that was bad enough. It was the way he acted when he thought no one was paying attention. I'd see him texting late at night, his phone screen angled away from my mom, his fingers moving fast like he didn't want her to catch a glimpse. He'd get these calls too, ones he'd always take outside, pacing the backyard or sitting in his truck. When he came back in, he'd brush it off if my mom asked, saying it was work or a buddy. She bought it every time. I didn't. Maybe it was because I already hated the guy, but those excuses didn't sit right. Construction doesn't call you at 10 p.m. on a Sunday, And he didn't strike me as the type with a ton of friends. I started keeping track of it in my head: when he'd leave, how long he'd be gone, what he'd say when he got back. One night, he said he had to run to the store at like 9 p.m., but he didn't come back for 3 hours, and there were no bags when he walked in. My mom was already asleep, so she didn't question it. I stayed up, though, watching from my room as his truck pulled into the driveway way later than any store trip should have taken. I tried talking to my mom about it once. I caught her in the kitchen one morning while Greg was at work and said I thought he was acting weird. She got this tired look on her face, like she didn't want to hear it, and told me I was overthinking things. "He's just busy," she said, stirring her coffee. "You need to give him a chance." That was it. No follow-up, no asking why I felt that way. She didn't care. All her energy went into pretending this was a perfect little family, and I was the one messing it up by noticing stuff. That's when I decided I'd figure it out myself. If she wouldn't listen, I'd get proof. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, maybe shove it in her face, maybe use it to get Greg out of our lives. But I couldn't just sit there feeling like the only one who saw through his act. I started watching him closer, waiting for him to slip up. And he did. It just took a while to catch him. I wasn't some detective or anything, but I figured if Greg was hiding something, I could at least catch him in the act. I didn't have a plan at first, just a gut feeling and a lot of time on my hands since no one in that house cared what I was up to. I started small. I'd linger near the living room when he was on his phone, pretending to grab a snack or something, hoping to overhear a name or a clue. Most of the time, he'd just mutter stuff I couldn't make out, but once I heard him say, "Yeah, I'll be there soon," in this low voice before heading out the door. My mom was in the shower, so she didn't see him leave. That night I decided to step it up. He'd left his truck keys on the counter, something he almost never did, and I grabbed them, not really knowing what I was looking for. I slipped outside and checked the glove box. Nothing crazy, just some receipts and a pack of gum, but one of the receipts was from a gas station an hour away, dated a few days ago when he told my mom he was working late. It wasn't hard proof, but it was enough to keep me digging. A couple days later, I got a real break. He left his phone on the couch while he went to the bathroom, and my mom was out getting groceries. I didn't have his passcode, but the screen lit up with a text notification. "See you tonight, usual spot." No name, just a number. I memorized it as fast as I could before he came back, then acted like I'd been scrolling on my own phone the whole time. He didn't suspect anything, just grabbed his phone and walked off. That night, he left again, same old, running to the store excuse. I wrote the number down in my notebook and started thinking about how to use it. I didn't have the guts to call it, not yet, but I kept watching him. He'd disappear for hours a couple times a week, always with some flimsy story. My mom never questioned it, but I was building a list in my head: the late-night calls, the gas station receipt, the text. It was adding up to something, and I was determined to find out what. I just didn't know how big it'd get. I couldn't let it go. That text, "See you tonight, usual spot," kept replaying in my head. I had the number, and after a few days of debating, I decided to do something about it. I didn't have a burner phone or anything fancy, so I used a free texting app on my laptop, one that hides your real number. I typed out a simple message: "Hey, it's me. Where's the usual spot again?" Then I waited. It took about an hour, but a reply came. "Same as always, 42nd and Maple. 8 p.m. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what I'd do with that, but it was a lead. That night, Greg left around 7:30, saying he had to pick up some tools from a coworker. I didn't tell my mom anything, she wouldn't have believed me anyway, but I grabbed my bike and headed out after him. 42nd and Maple was about 20 minutes away, a rundown part of town with old houses and a couple of sketchy bars. I stayed a few blocks back, watching his truck pull into a driveway. He got out, walked up to the house, and went inside like he owned the place. I hid behind some bushes across the street, feeling like an idiot but too deep to back out. After a while I saw movement. A woman opened the door, not my mom obviously, and Greg hugged her. Then 2 kids ran out, maybe 8 and 10 years old, and he ruffled their hair. I sat there, frozen, as it hit me. This wasn't some fling. This was a whole other family. He stayed for over an hour, and when he left, he kissed the woman goodbye. I biked home as fast as I could, my head spinning. Greg had a secret life, a wife, kids, a house, and my mom didn't know. Or maybe she did, and that was worse. I got back before he did and locked myself in my room. I didn't sleep that night. All I could think about was how long this had been going on. Those kids looked too old for it to be new. This wasn't just cheating, this was a double life, and I was living in the fake half of it. The next day, I couldn't keep it in. I had to tell my mom what I'd seen. She was in the kitchen, making breakfast for Greg like nothing was wrong, while he sat at the table scrolling through his phone. I waited until he left for work, then cornered her. I didn't ease into it, I just blurted out everything. I told her about following him, the house on 42nd and Maple, the woman, the kids. I said he had another family, that he'd been lying to her the whole time. My voice was shaking, but I got it all out. She didn't react how I expected. She didn't yell or cry right away. She just stood there, holding a spatula, staring at the counter. After a minute she said, "You must have gotten it wrong. Greg wouldn't do that." I told her I saw it with my own eyes, that there was no mistake. She shook her head, said I didn't understand, that I was making it up because I didn't like him. I pushed back, told her about the text, the late nights, all the stuff I'd been tracking. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were wet, but she didn't say anything else. She just turned back to the stove and kept cooking. Later that night, I heard them talking in their room. Not arguing, just talking, low and steady. I couldn't make out the words, but when Greg left the next morning, my mom came to my room. She sat on the edge of my bed and said she'd asked him about it. He admitted it, everything. The woman was his wife, the kids were his, and he'd been with them for years before he met my mom. But then she said something that floored me. She was staying with him. She said he promised to figure it out. That he loved her too, and she believed him. She was crying while she said it, but she didn't waver. She chose him, knowing all of it. I couldn't look at her the same after that. She wasn't just blind, she was weak. She'd picked a liar over me, over the truth, over everything my dad had given her. After my mom told me she was staying with Greg, something snapped in me. I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not with him, and not with her. She'd made her choice, and it wasn't me. I spent the next day in my room, thinking about what to do. I didn't have a job or money saved up, but I had one option left, my dad. He'd never stopped texting me since I moved out, just little check-ins to see how I was doing. I hadn't answered much, mostly because I felt guilty for picking my mom over him, but now I needed him. I called him that night. He picked up on the second ring, and I told him everything, Greg's secret family, my mom's decision, how I couldn't live there anymore. He didn't interrupt, just listened until I was done. Then he said I could come stay with him, no questions asked. He didn't even sound mad about me choosing my mom before. He just said he'd come get me whenever I was ready. I packed my stuff that same night, just a duffel bag with clothes and my laptop. I didn't care about the rest. The next morning, I told my mom I was leaving. She was in the living room, folding laundry, and Greg was at work. I said I wasn't going to live with a guy who had another family, and I wasn't going to stay with her if she was okay with it. She started crying again, saying I didn't understand how hard it was for her, how she loved Greg and thought he'd change. She asked me to stay, said we could work it out, but it was half-hearted. She didn't get up, didn't try to stop me. I think she knew I was done. My dad showed up an hour later. I threw my bag in his car, and we drove off. I didn't look back at the house. My mom texted me later that day, saying she was sorry and that she'd always loved me, but it didn't change anything. I was out of there, and she was still stuck with him.